What does it take to catch a criminal who believes he's intellectually superior to everyone hunting him? For 6 months, a brilliant former mathematics professor orchestrated perfect crimes across Boston, leaving no evidence, only taunting notes addressed to 3 specific investigators. "I'm smarter than all 3 of you," he proclaimed repeatedly, manipulating every move of the investigation. But even the most calculating minds make mistakes, and sometimes it's not the complex puzzles that trip up a genius. It's the simplest technology we use every day. 1 text message, 6 seconds of digital connection. That's all it took to bring down the man who thought he had outsmarted the entire Boston Police Department. The vault door of Boston First National Bank stood wide open, its sophisticated locking mechanism disabled without triggering a single alarm. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the organized chaos inside. Safety deposit boxes had been methodically opened, their contents missing, yet nothing else in the bank was disturbed. No fingerprints, no footprints, no DNA, no surveillance footage. Detective Lawrence Blackwood ran his weathered hand along the cold metal of the vault door, his steel-gray eyes narrowing as he studied the scene. 27 years on the force had taught him that perfection was impossible in crime, yet here he was, facing the 3rd perfect heist in 6 months. Same as the others. Blackwood muttered, his Boston accent thickening with frustration. Professional job, methodical, surgical. Standing behind him, Dr. Samantha Reeves from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit nodded slowly, her trained eyes scanning every inch of the crime scene. Tall and composed with auburn hair pulled back in a tight bun, she projected calm authority despite the tension surrounding the case. "He's evolving, though. Look at the pattern of the boxes he chose." She pointed to the opened compartments. "Last time was random. This time it's mathematical, prime numbers only." Ravi Kapoor, hunched over his laptop at a nearby desk, looked up with interest. The youngest of the 3 at 32, Ravi had been brought in for his unparalleled expertise in digital forensics after the 2nd heist. "That tracks with what we know so far," Ravi said, pushing his glasses up. "The security system was disabled using an algorithm that would require advanced knowledge of cryptography and mathematics." A uniformed officer approached, holding an evidence bag containing a single cream-colored card. "Detective Blackwood found this inside the manager's office. It's addressed to you 3 specifically." Blackwood snapped on a latex glove and took the bag, holding it up to the light. The handwriting was elegant, almost artistic, the same as the previous 2 notes. Dr. Reeves and Kapoor gathered close as Blackwood read aloud, "Detective Blackwood, Dr. Reeves and Mr. Kapoor. 6 months, 3 heists, 0 evidence. I'm smarter than all 3 of you combined. Your psychological profiles are elementary, your forensic techniques predictable, and your investigative methods obsolete. I'm not just stealing valuables, I'm stealing your reputations. Catch me if you can." The room fell silent. Outside, media vans were already assembling, camera crews preparing for the press briefing that would inevitably follow. Captain Marcus Santiago would expect answers they didn't have. "He knows us," Ravi said quietly. "He studied each of us. This isn't just about the heists anymore." Dr. Reeves took the bag, studying the handwriting closely. "This is personal now. He's challenging us specifically because we represent different approaches to investigation. The old-school detective," she nodded to Blackwood, "the psychological profiler," she touched her own chest, "and the modern digital investigator," she gestured to Ravi. "He's telling us we're failing on all fronts," Blackwood growled, the veins in his neck bulging slightly. At 53, with salt and pepper hair and the build of someone who refused to surrender to age, Blackwood had never failed to close a major case, until now. Captain Santiago pushed through the gathering of officers, his face grim. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed the pressure the department was under. "Please tell me you have something, anything, this time." The 3 investigators exchanged glances. The weight of public expectation, departmental pressure, and professional pride bore down on them. Millions of dollars had been stolen without a trace, and the only evidence the perpetrator left behind was designed to mock them. "We've got a profile," Dr. Reeves offered. "He's highly intelligent, meticulous, with advanced knowledge of security systems, mathematics, and police procedure. Likely male, 35 to 50, educated, possibly with a background in academia or high-level security. And he's a narcissist who craves recognition of his intelligence. So basically a genius criminal mastermind who wants to prove he's smarter than the entire police force, Santiago summarized bitterly. That narrows it down to every villain in every crime novel ever written. Blackwood's phone rang. The caller ID showed it was the Boston Globe's crime reporter. He declined the call with a sharp jab of his finger. "The press is circling," he said, unnecessarily. "They'll tear us apart if we don't give them something." Outside, a crowd had gathered behind the police tape. Among them, unnoticed by the officers or detectives, stood a man in his mid-40s with intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Elliot Thorne observed the investigators with barely contained delight, watching them scramble like ants whose hill had been disturbed. He tucked his hands into the pockets of his expensive coat, feeling the burner phone. There, the one he would use to send his next message when the time was right. The game was just beginning, and he was several moves ahead. The task force headquarters buzzed with activity as Blackwood pinned the 3 notes to the investigation board. Red string connected them to crime scene photos, witness statements, and the precious few pieces of evidence they had managed to gather. Dr. Reeves stood back, arms crossed, studying the visual representation of their investigation. "Our unsub is toying with us," she said, using the FBI terminology for unknown subject. "Each note is more personal, more taunting. He's getting a psychological reward from this cat-and-mouse game." Ravi nodded, not looking up from his array of monitors. "I've analyzed the pattern of the crimes. They occur exactly 27 days apart, always on a Tuesday, always targeting institutions with different security systems. He's challenging himself," Dr. Reeves concluded. "Each new target presents a different puzzle for him to solve, and us to fail at," Blackwood added grimly. The door swung open as Captain Santiago entered with a new face, a nervous-looking man in his late 30s, with a receding hairline and fidgeting hands. "This is Timothy Gallagher," Santiago announced, "former security consultant for 2 of the 3 institutions that were hit. Mr. Gallagher was fired from Boston First National 3 months before the heist for erratic behavior." Blackwood's eyes narrowed as he assessed Gallagher. The suspect matched some elements of their profile: intelligent, knowledgeable about security systems, with potential grievances against the targeted institutions. "I didn't do anything," Gallagher blurted before anyone could speak. "I know how this looks, but I've been set up." Dr. Reeves stepped forward, her voice deliberately calm. "No one is accusing you of anything yet, Mr. Gallagher. We're just gathering information. Would you mind telling us about your work at these institutions?" As the interrogation proceeded in the main room, Elliot Thorne sat in his meticulously organized apartment across the city. Monitors displayed news coverage of the investigation, while a sophisticated police scanner kept him informed of their movements. A whiteboard contained his own version of their investigation board, but his was more complete, with details about each investigator's methods, habits, and weaknesses. Thorne smiled as he added, "A new note: pursuing Gallagher." Everything was proceeding according to his plan. Formerly a tenured professor of advanced mathematics at MIT, Thorne had been quietly dismissed after a scandal involving academic fraud. Not his, but he had been the scapegoat. His brilliant career destroyed by politics and mediocrity. He had retreated from public life, his genius unrecognized, his contributions forgotten. He traced a finger along a photograph of Dr. Reeves. "You think you understand the criminal mind, Doctor. You haven't encountered one like mine." His finger moved to Blackwood's picture. "Old-school methods won't work on new-world problems, Detective." Finally, to Ravi's image, "You're good with technology, Mr. Kapoor, but I've been breaking code since before you were born." Thorne checked his watch. A rare Swiss timepiece acquired during his second heist. In precisely 4 hours, Gallagher's apartment would be searched, and the false evidence he had planted there would be discovered. The investigators would think they had their man, until the DNA results came back negative in approximately 7 days. By then, Thorne would be ready for his next move. Back at headquarters, Blackwood wasn't convinced by Gallagher. The suspect was nervous, yes, but not in the way guilty people usually were. It felt wrong. "He doesn't fit the profile," Dr. Reeves whispered as they watched Gallagher through the one-way glass after the initial questioning. "He's anxious, disorganized. Our unsub is methodical, supremely confident. Maybe he's acting," Santiago suggested, eager for a breakthrough. Ravi entered the observation room with a tablet. "I've been digging into Gallagher's background. He was at home during the first heist, verified by his building's security cameras. He couldn't have done it." "Unless he has an accomplice," Santiago insisted. "There's something else," Ravi continued. Gallagher received an anonymous email 2 days before each heist containing detailed personal information about him. Someone's been stalking him. Dr. Reeves's eyes widened. He's being set up. Our unsub is deliberately creating a false trail. The realization hit them simultaneously. They were being manipulated. Each step of their investigation anticipated and controlled by the very person they were trying to catch. As they released a relieved Gallagher, a clerk approached with a courier package that had just been delivered to the precinct. Inside was a flash drive and another handwritten note. Did you really think it would be that easy? Poor Mr. Gallagher, a convenient scapegoat with the right credentials but the wrong temperament. Detective Blackwood, you sensed it wasn't him from the start, didn't you? Trust those instincts. Dr. Reeves, your profile is improving but still lacking. And Mr. Kapoor, check your digital security. I've been reading your emails. I'm smarter than all three of you, and I'm just getting started. Ravi immediately secured the flash drive, preparing to examine it in a quarantined system. The implications were chilling. Their unsub was not only anticipating their moves, but actively directing them, like pieces on a chessboard. Meanwhile, Elliot Thorne closed his laptop with satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. Establish superiority. Now for Phase 2. Get personal. Rain pounded against the windows of the precinct as Blackwood stared at the investigation board, now crowded with dead ends and false leads. 3 weeks had passed since they released Gallagher, and the anticipated 27-day mark was approaching fast. The flash drive they'd received contained nothing but encrypted gibberish, a puzzle they still hadn't solved despite Ravi's best efforts. The media had been brutal. Boston's best baffled, screamed the morning headline. Public confidence in the police department was eroding, and the pressure from above was intensifying. The mayor's office called again? Santiago said, entering the room with coffee cups for the exhausted team. They want results or changes to the task force. Dr. Reeves looked up from her notes, fatigue evident in her eyes. She hadn't been home in 36 hours. Changing the team is exactly what he wants. He selected us specifically for this game. New players would just give him new targets. Ravi nodded in agreement, his usually neat appearance now disheveled. I've been reviewing everything we know about him. He's methodical, plans months in advance, and has extensive knowledge of all of us. Which means he's been watching us for some time, Blackwood concluded. This isn't a sudden crime spree, it's a calculated campaign. The tension in the room was palpable. What had started as a high-profile case had become personal for each of them. Their professional reputations were on the line, but more than that, their self-confidence had been shaken. They were being outplayed, and they knew it. I've requested assistance from Dr. Olivia Chen, Dr. Reeves announced. She's a forensic psychiatrist who specializes in narcissistic criminals who engage with law enforcement. Blackwood raised an eyebrow. You think bringing in another expert is wise? He'll just add her to his game. We need fresh perspective, Dr. Reeves countered. We're too close to this now. Before Blackwood could respond, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking news. A sophisticated jewel heist had just been reported at Harrington's, Boston's most exclusive jewelry store. No alarms triggered, no witnesses. The exact same M.O. He's early, Ravi said, checking the date. It's only been 22 days. He's changing the pattern to throw us off, Blackwood said, already grabbing his coat. At Harrington's, the scene was disturbingly familiar. Millions in rare diamonds had vanished without a trace. But this time, the note left behind was different. 3 separate cards, each addressed to one investigator, each containing deeply personal information. Blackwood's mentioned his divorce 15 years ago and his estranged daughter in Chicago. Dr. Reeves's referenced a patient she had failed to save during her early career, information that wasn't public knowledge. Ravi's mentioned the scholarship he had nearly lost due to a hacking incident in college, a sealed record that shouldn't have been accessible. He's been digging into our pasts, Blackwood said grimly. This is psychological warfare now. Across town, Elliot Thorne watched the live news coverage with a glass of expensive bourbon in hand. The cameras caught the shock on the investigators' faces as they emerged from the jewelry store. Thorne raised his glass in a mock toast to the screen. Now you understand what it feels like to have your privacy invaded, your secrets exposed, he murmured. To have someone else control the narrative of your life? He opened a leather-bound journal filled with intricate diagrams, timelines, and notes. The next phase was his most ambitious yet, a heist that would cement his reputation as Boston's greatest criminal mind. But first, He needed to push his opponents to their breaking point. Thorne picked up a burner phone, one of dozens he rotated regularly, and composed a text message to a number he had acquired through careful surveillance. He hesitated before sending it, considering the risk. Until now, he had maintained complete digital isolation, leaving no electronic trail whatsoever. But the game was evolving. The psychological pressure needed to intensify. With a smile, he pressed send, unaware that this small deviation from his perfect methodology would eventually become his undoing. Back at the precinct, the team regrouped with Dr. Chen, a composed woman in her 50s with penetrating eyes and a reputation for understanding the criminal mind. Your unsub is executing what we call psychological dominance theater, Dr. Chen explained. Each crime is a performance designed to demonstrate his intellectual superiority. How do we counter that? Santiago asked, desperation creeping into his voice. You don't play his game, she said simply. Right now you're reacting exactly as he wants, chasing leads he creates, following his breadcrumbs. He's directing this investigation like a conductor leads an orchestra. The implication hung in the air. They needed to change their approach entirely. But how do you catch someone who seems to be several steps ahead of your every move? As if on cue, Ravi's phone pinged with a notification. His face went pale as he read the message. It's from him, he whispered. A text directly to my personal phone. The message read, watching you scramble is becoming boring. Perhaps I need to raise the stakes. What do you think, Mr. Kapoor? Ready for a real challenge? The task force. Headquarters transformed overnight. Gone were the scattered papers and haphazard notes. In their place stood a new approach, a counter-strategy born of desperation and insight. If he wants to play chess, we'll play chess, Blackwood declared, standing before a freshly organized investigation board. But from now on, we control which pieces move. Dr. Reeves had spent the night with Dr. Chen, developing a psychological counter-offensive based on their evolving understanding of the unsub. He's a narcissist who needs to prove his intellectual superiority, she explained. That compulsion can be used against him. Ravi, who had been working non-stop since receiving the text message, looked up from his computer with the first genuine smile in weeks. I think I found something, a pattern in the timing of his communications. The team gathered around as Ravi displayed a complex timeline on the main screen. He always contacts us during specific time, windows, between 8 and 10 p.m. on weeknights. Never weekends, never during business hours. Someone with a structured schedule, Dr. Reeves noted, possibly still employed or maintaining the appearance of a normal routine. More importantly, Ravi continued, the text he sent me was the first electronic communication. Everything before was handwritten notes or that encrypted flash drive. He's escalating his risk-taking. Blackwood leaned forward, sudden intensity in his eyes. Can you trace the text? Not directly. He used a burner phone, but Ravi's fingers flew across the keyboard. Every cell phone, even burners, connects to nearby towers. If he maintains his pattern and sends another message tonight, we might be able to narrow down his location. For the first time in months, a genuine sense of hope energized the team. They had finally identified a potential weakness in their adversary's methodology. His need to taunt them directly was overriding his caution. Captain Santiago approved their plan immediately. They would stage a very public pursuit of another false lead, making it appear they were completely misdirected. News outlets would be fed information suggesting they were focusing their investigation on a former security expert named Helena Vasquez, who had recently returned to Boston after years abroad. We need to make it convincing, Dr. Reeves insisted. He's watching our every move. The trap was set. That evening, as news crews filmed Blackwood and a team of officers interviewing Ms. Vasquez, a department administrator who had agreed to play along. Ravi and Dr. Reeves monitored communications from a van parked nearby, equipment ready to triangulate any signals. Across the city, Elliot Thorne watched the evening news with growing amusement. Vasquez? Really? He muttered, shaking his head at the investigator's apparent incompetence. The woman had been in Madrid during the first two heists, information that would take them less than a day to verify. Thorne reached for one of his burner phones, unable to resist the urge to mock their latest misstep. His fingers hovered over the keys as he composed a particularly scathing message to Detective Blackwood this time. In the surveillance van, Ravi's equipment suddenly pinged. We've got activity. Cell Tower 14B is registering a new burner phone activation. Dr. Reeves grabbed her radio. Blackwood, keep the show going. We've got a hit. The detective nodded almost imperceptibly toward the camera, knowing their unsub would be watching, and continued his very public, very flawed investigation. Thorne pressed send, a satisfied smile playing across his lips as his message went out. Detective Blackwood, your investigative skills have deteriorated with age. Ms. Vasquez was sipping sangria in Madrid while I was emptying safety deposit boxes. I'm smarter than all three of you, and now you're not even trying? In the van, Ravi's system locked onto the signal. Got it. The message originated from Tower 14B coverage area, approximately 6 blocks in the Back Bay neighborhood. That narrows it down to what? A few thousand people? Dr. Reeves asked, trying to temper her excitement. Wait. Ravi's voice rose in pitch as his fingers raced across the keyboard. The phone connected to a residential Wi-Fi network for approximately 6 seconds before switching back to cellular data. That's a mistake, a big mistake. Can you trace the Wi-Fi? Better than that, Ravi said, his eyes wide. The phone automatically synced to his cloud account during those 6 seconds. I'm getting a partial email address, ETFO. Dr. Reeves grabbed her phone. Get me everything on residents in that area with the initials ET or ETH. The game had suddenly, dramatically changed. Their invisible opponent had finally left a digital footprint. Within an hour, they had a list of 17 possibilities. By cross-referencing with their profile, male 35-50, highly educated, background in mathematics or security, they narrowed it to 3. And when Ravi discovered that one of them was a former MIT mathematics professor named Elliot Thorne, who had been dismissed under controversial circumstances 4 years earlier, they knew they had their man. Back at his apartment, unaware of the breakthrough, Thorne continued his preparations for what he envisioned as his masterpiece. Simultaneous hit on 3 separate targets that would cement his legacy. His attention was focused on the blueprints spread across his desk, his phone discarded and forgotten nearby. The simple device that had just betrayed him seemed insignificant compared to the elaborate plans taking shape before him. The 6-second connection to his home Wi-Fi network, a trivial, unconscious mistake, had accomplished what months of intensive investigation could not. The most brilliant criminal mind Boston had seen in decades had been undone, not by a worthy opponent outsmarting him, but by the automated settings on a consumer device. As Blackwood, Dr. Reeves, and Ravi gathered to plan their next move, a sense of cautious triumph filled the room. They had a name. They had a location. For the first time, they were ahead of Elliot Thorne, and he had no idea. The surveillance operation was established with meticulous care, unmarked vehicles positioned strategically around Thorne's. Beacon Hill brownstone, plainclothes officers rotating shifts at nearby cafes and shops, Ravi monitoring all digital communications going in and out of the building. No one wanted to risk alerting Thorne that the hunters had finally identified their prey. He's been inside for 48 hours straight, Blackwood reported, lowering his binoculars as he sat in an unmarked car across the street. Multiple lights moving from room to room, deliveries arriving, but never any visitors. Dr. Reeves studied the building's elegant facade. We need to see inside before making a move. His apartment could be booby-trapped, or he might have escape routes we're not aware of. A judge had granted them a warrant for electronic surveillance based on the evidence Ravi had collected, but they were proceeding with extreme caution. This was a man who had anticipated their every move for months, until that single text message mistake. I've accessed his power usage data, Ravi said, through their secure communication channel. He's consuming 3 times the electricity of comparable units, multiple computers, specialized equipment. What about the building's security cameras? Blackwood asked. That's the interesting part, Ravi replied. He's tapped into them. He can see everyone entering or leaving the building, including the back exits. Dr. Reeves considered this information. He's created a fortress, a controlled environment where he can monitor everything. So how do we get inside without tipping him off? Santiago asked from headquarters. Dr. Reeves had been analyzing Thorne's psychological profile for days, refining it as they gathered more information about his background and methods. We don't, she said finally. We make him come to us. The plan was psychologically elegant. Rather than storming the fortress, they would use Thorne's narcissism against him, his pathological need to prove his intellectual superiority over them. He needs an audience, Dr. Reeves explained, specifically our audience. The 3 of us represent the challenge he's set for himself. Ravi crafted a carefully worded text message from his department phone to Thorne's burner. Professor Thorne, we understand now. The mathematics behind your crimes, it's beyond our comprehension. We've been studying it for weeks without success. Whatever point you're making about your intelligence, you've made it. We concede. They sent the message and waited. Inside his apartment, Elliot Thorne sat surrounded by computer screens, blueprints, and mathematical formulas scrawled on whiteboards. His next series of crimes was planned down to the second, a symphonic crescendo to his campaign against Boston's finest minds. When his burner phone chimed with Ravi's message, he read it with narrowing eyes. They knew his name. Somehow, they had identified him. But instead of attempting an arrest, they were surrendering. Thorne paced his apartment, agitation growing with each step. This wasn't how the game was supposed to end. There should be a final confrontation, a moment where he could reveal the full brilliance of his methodology to his opponents. A concession via text message was anticlimactic, unsatisfying. He grabbed the phone and typed furiously, "You think I'll be satisfied with your digital white flag, Mr. Kapoor? My work is art, mathematical perfection applied to human behavior prediction. You haven't even begun to understand the elegance of my solutions or the mediocrity of your methods." In the surveillance vehicle, Ravi showed the message to Dr. Reeves with a smile. "He's engaging. His ego won't let him accept our surrender. Push harder," she instructed. "Question his achievement." Ravi sent another message. "Perhaps we're missing something, but your mathematical perfection seems to boil down to simple social engineering and security exploits. Clever, but hardly revolutionary. Unless there's more you haven't shown us?" Inside his apartment, Thorne read the message with growing rage. How dare they dismiss his work as simple or merely clever? They hadn't seen even a fraction of his methodology. Before he could stop himself, he began composing a lengthy, detailed explanation of the mathematical models he had developed to predict security responses, the game theory he had applied to manipulate the investigation, and the custom algorithms he had created to identify exploitable weaknesses in supposedly impenetrable systems. His fingers flew across the small keyboard, his need to prove his genius overriding all caution. He included specific details about each crime that only the perpetrator could know, details they had withheld from the press. As the messages poured in, Ravi captured each one, forwarding them to the district attorney who was standing by. "He's confessing to everything," Ravi said incredulously, "giving us details only the perpetrator would know. His narcissism won't allow his genius to go unrecognized," Dr. Reeves explained. "Being dismissed as merely clever is intolerable to him." Blackwood checked his weapon. "We've got everything we need. Time to end this." The arrest team moved in silently, using the building's service entrance that Thorne's cameras couldn't fully cover. They disabled his power before breaching the door, eliminating any chance for him to erase evidence or activate countermeasures. They found Elliot Thorne standing in the center of his apartment, surrounded by the evidence of his crimes, still clutching the burner phone. His expression shifted from shock to a strange, almost relieved smile. "Ah, the trio arrives in person at last," he said, as though welcoming expected dinner guests. "I was beginning to think you weren't up to the challenge." Blackwood stepped forward with handcuffs. "Elliot Thorne, you're under arrest for multiple counts of grand larceny, breaking and entering, and cybercrimes." As they led him out, Thorne maintained his composure, his eyes taking in the investigators he had taunted for so long. "I'm curious," he said casually. "How did you finally identify me? Which brilliant deduction led you to my door?" Dr. Reeves and Blackwood exchanged glances, and Ravi stepped forward with the burner phone in an evidence bag. "Your text message connected to your home Wi-Fi for 6 seconds, Ravi explained. "The most basic setting on any smartphone, that's it. That's what brought down your perfect criminal enterprise." For the first time, Thorne's confident facade cracked. His eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed in fury. "Impossible. I disabled automatic Wi-Fi connections on all my devices." "Apparently not this one," Ravi said, holding up the bagged phone. "Sometimes it's not the complex systems that fail us, Professor. It's the simplest things we take for granted." As they processed, Thorne at the station, cataloging the evidence from his apartment, which included detailed plans for his next series of heists, the former professor maintained a stoic silence, his brilliant mind no doubt already calculating appeals and defense strategies. But as they led him to his cell, something unexpected happened. Thorne's expression shifted from anger to an enigmatic smile. "You know," he said softly to Blackwood, "for someone supposedly smarter than all three of you, that was a remarkably stupid mistake." Blackwood frowned. What's your point, Thorn? My point, Detective, is that people like me don't make mistakes like that. His smile widened slightly, unless they're intentional. As the cell door closed, leaving Thorn alone with his cryptic statement, Blackwood felt a chill run down his spine. He rejoined Dr. Reeves and Ravi in the conference room where they were celebrating their success. Something's not right, he told them, recounting Thorn's final comment. Ravi shook his head. He's playing mind games, trying to salvage his ego by implying he meant to get caught. Maybe, Dr. Reeves said thoughtfully, or maybe there's something we're still missing. As if on cue, Santiago burst into the room, his face ashen. We just got word from the evidence processing team. They found something hidden in the lining of Thorn's jacket. He placed a small, folded piece of paper on the table. Written in Thorn's elegant handwriting were the words, Act 1, complete. The three investigators stared at the note, the implications slowly sinking in. Was Thorn's capture part of a larger plan? Was there an accomplice they hadn't identified? Or was this final note simply one last attempt to maintain psychological dominance, even in defeat? The answer would have to wait for another day. For now, Boston's most brilliant criminal was behind bars, his perfect record of crimes finally broken by the most mundane of technological mistakes. A single text message that connected to Wi-Fi for just 6 seconds. Sometimes even genius has its limits.